Atmosfear by Nobody. Chapter 6. Down to Business. Besides sunlight, the crowing of lusty cocks all around the neighborhood is a sure way to wake up even the most gifted sleeper in the morning. It's a pleasant sound to be stirred by, especially when you know that there's good coffee waiting to be made on a handsome stone terrace under a blue sky, far away from the grinding urgency of the self-destructive Western lifestyle. My partner was just finishing his usual breakfast of baguette with sardines, mayonnaise, and onions when I emerged from my room, fresh from the shower. "Good morning, Rasta," he said. "I have to jump to town. My land for my house is going along fast now. The boys who work there clear all the trees and shit. Now I need cement there, 1 ton exactly. Also, I need to arrange food and water there, and some tools for the boys." "That's a lot of work you got ahead of you," I said, while digging into the breakfast voraciously. "You want to come see it yourself?" he asked. "Oh, not today. If you don't mind, I'll just stay here and practice the guitar." "No problem, brother. You are free to do anything here. There's a restaurant down there next to the gas station when you want to eat. You can also call Van Damme and see if he can come see you." I did just that, and Mohammed's big brother promised me to come by with his guitar in a couple of hours' time. In the meanwhile, I took a pleasure stroll down to the highway below our hotel, before the sun would reach its pinnacle in the sky and turn into a ferocious maelstrom of radiation, which thankfully would only last for a couple of hours. After this, it would remain a gentle divinity for the rest of the evening. Despite having a few lush villas built on it, our hilltop still had no decent roads, but only rocky paths that were flanked by trash, unfortunately. Plastic bottles, cans, rags, anything imaginable except bio-waste, thankfully enough. This was a disgusting blot on the otherwise serene atmosphere that the place had. But the locals had their own way of waste management. They piled all that garbage into huge piles and set them alight. Public services in this sector were out of the question, as were most of the other things that we Europeans took for granted. Small lizards scuttled in the midst of this partly smoldering savanna-like landscape. They were occasionally hunted by a few stray birds, which were surprisingly few in number. I had been told that it was because of the noise of the traffic that most winged creatures chose to seek refuge from more rural areas. I couldn't blame them. By the side of the highway, the roar of endless rows of old dirty vehicles was almost deafening, though luckily it didn't reach all the way up to our premises. Ravens were an exception to this. They didn't seem to mind the noise, being aware that there was plenty of rotten stuff and carrion for them to feast on in these parts. Flapping their massive black wings lazily, they swept through the blue sky in large, croaking flocks without any fear of predators. Nobody eats the raven, after all, but the raven eats everyone in the end. Once down at the roadside, I stopped over at a wooden kiosk to buy a pack of cigarettes and an iced energy drink bottle from a careworn lady who had one baby strapped to her back, as well as having 4 others racing about the shoddy counter that she presided over. Women in there usually began to bear children as early as 16, from what I had heard, and kept on having them as long as they could, since large families were considered a blessing. Right next to this establishment was a makeshift petrol sales point, which consisted of a rickety table holding 1-liter plastic bottles filled with gasoline. The scraggly salesman poured these one by one into the gas tanks of his clients and usually threw a few more in the trunk as well while the engine was still running. Van Damme arrived on his motorbike not long after I returned from my energizing saunter. I helped him carry his guitar bag to our apartment and then ran over to the hotel reception to ask for a few cold beers from the nightclub's icebox. I had heard from Mohammed that his big brother enjoyed having a few brews for his refreshment. "This is my guitar," Van Damme told me in French as he dug into his bag. "I think the neck has some problem, though. Do you think you could help me with that?" I took the instrument on my lap and saw that it was the cheapest, crappiest China-made 6-string imaginable. One that couldn't sell for $5 back in Finland. The neck itself was indeed bent like a banana, which made it almost impossible for me to play it, as the strings were strung so high above the fretboard. "Well," I said, "it looks like the truss rod has gotten loose. That's a metal rod inside the neck that helps keep the thing straight, you know. But no worries, I have some tools to straighten it out for you." I got my equipment ready at hand, but after a more careful study, I realized that the truss rod had actually snapped right off. There was nothing but a rusted piece of metal sticking out of it. "Oh, shit," I said. "I'm afraid it's beyond repair. I can't do anything to this one." Besides having sustained this regrettable damage, the poor wreck of a guitar didn't even have a proper set of strings. You see, a normal electric guitar has 6 metal strings on it, each thinner than the other, so that the lowest string is very thin and the highest is quite thick. But this particular specimen had random-sized strings wound into it, which was something that I had never seen in my life before. "You don't have proper guitar strings?" I asked. "No, my friend, they are really expensive, and you would have to go all the way to Conakry to get them." "I see. Damn, I have only acoustic guitar strings with me, you know. They don't work on an electric guitar, really, because they're made from different metal that doesn't work with these pickups." "Well," he said, "I do have an acoustic guitar as well." Without further ado, I gave him 2 packs of acoustic guitar strings, and after this we commenced the lesson on Yankadi guitar rhythms. And by Thoth, Van Damme played this mangled-up joke of a guitar better than almost anyone I had seen play a normal guitar in my life. It was a grand testament to the fact that you didn't need expensive gear to be an amazing artist. My brain was reeling from the complexity of the music that he showed me, but with his patient help we were able to make reasonable progress on it. The cold beers helped keep us fresh in the gentle heat of the afternoon. "People don't drink here that much?" I asked. "No, not really. But you can have drinks in the bar. No one will grudge you for it. Some local people will also drink alcohol in the bars, but maybe more than half will just drink Coke or milk or something like that." "Milk?" I asked with disbelief. "Yeah," he said and laughed. "Cold milk to give them energy to keep dancing for many hours. Pretty different from Finland, eh?" "Oh, Jesus, you wouldn't believe. Over there, people drink like hell. They get so wasted that they fight and scream like animals on the streets and bars. And they take lots of drugs too, especially the creative people. Maybe because of their sensitive nature that can feel the madness of our way of life more vividly, huh? Almost every musician, writer, and painter I know in Finland is either an alcoholic or a drug addict. They take marijuana, amphetamine, LSD, mushrooms, heroin, prescription drugs. I've seen some of my friends turn into monsters because of them, capable of killing another person, even their own friend. Others have transformed into drooling lunatics, completely retarded and unable to form a coherent sentence, unable to recognize an old friend. And none of the artists I know make any money either, you know. In Finland, no one appreciates the arts or the artists. People consider them to be loafers and nothing more. Good Lord, Van Dam said. They must be unhappy down there. Hell yeah, they are. People in general are not happy there. I can walk a whole day down the streets and not see a single person smiling or laughing. Nothing but bickering, grumpy, and anxious faces like death masks. Even though they say Finland is the happiest country in the world. But that's just according to questionnaires, mind you. Finnish people always lie about what they feel. Man, you can ask a guy how he's doing and he'll say, just dandy. And right after that, he'll just go hang himself. They're ashamed of feeling bad and to talk about their emotions. That's why over 15% of Finns are taking psychotropic medications for anxiety, depression, bipolar syndrome, all kinds of mental shit. And they're medicating the children too nowadays, at an increasing rate every year. School kids are popping mind-altering pills younger and younger every year. That's terrible, my teacher gasped. And you? Do you have children yourself? No, I haven't found the right woman for that yet. And to be honest, I don't want to bring a child up in that shithole country where the school would try to turn him into a monster, a fucking robot slave. I'll move out of there sooner or later and have a family somewhere in continental Europe where people still know how to live. But I'm not the only one. It's pretty common to be childless over in Finland too, you know. None of my friends have children, for example. What? Why is that? Well, people are so anxious, you know, about their careers, about money, about the economy, the future, and the environment. All kinds of hypothetical fears make them neurotic, really. They're all waiting for some sense of security to take over their minds. But it never happens. They just crawl towards their graves, anxious and paralyzed, completely unfulfilled and unloved. Or then some of them just want to get successful and make a lot of money first. They think having kids is a hindrance instead of a blessing. They're all selfish out there and scared shitless of life. Van Dam shook his head sadly, but I kept myself going as I was on a roll with the beer going through my veins. I know you may not believe me, but it's all true. They're frigid, Puritans, and hypocrites, or then self-destructive addicts. There's no golden mean over there. Everything is twisted, out of proportion, filled with shame. To be honest with you, Finnish people are not even having much sex either. There's so many single people there you wouldn't believe. Hordes and hordes of lonely people living next to one another without anyone to love. A nation of strangers, I say. And even the ones who are in relationship don't have sex because of stress or because they say they just don't have time for it. Because they have to be active. The clock is ticking. Everyone's so eager to make money and be some type of fucking busybodies that they don't have any time left to enjoy life. It's like a graveyard, I tell you, a spiritual graveyard. We have the lowest rate of sexual activity in all of Europe almost, and one of the highest rates of domestic abuse in Europe. Still, it's tragic, really. To say the least, my teacher was quite taken aback by this unrestrained rant of mine. Once Mohammed returned from his errands in town, Van Damme said to him right away, "Our friend Tom here has been telling me some strange things about Finland." "Yeah, man," my partner laughed. "This boy sure loves Finland. But it's true, you know. It's not easy over there. No fucking way. I try to tell you many times, but you don't believe it." "Especially for the immigrants, it's really difficult," I went on. "Finnish people are generally racist, especially towards those of different color who are not Westerners. The biggest political party in Finland right now is the one that hates foreigners, that calls them scum and wants to get rid of them all. These people have horrible lives themselves, of course. They're a bunch of failures and thereby blame their failings on the foreigners. They hate everything different, and they hate themselves, more importantly, which is the main reason behind their xenophobia, their paranoia." "But anyway," my partner cut in, changing the subject before I would get even more carried away, "can we play some song together now? Tom, can you try it?" "Sure," I said, feeling a bit ashamed of my outburst. "I'll give it a try." I did my best to accompany the two brothers on this one particular Yankari song we had been working on, keeping my playing to the minimum and just making sure that I was at least keeping the time correctly. My partner sang from his heart's content now, having proper accompaniment finally, after struggling for years to find the right sound for his music back in Finland, where no one could understand what he was really after. "That's great," Mohammed enthused as we finished. "You will get it, Tom. Let's practice here a couple of weeks more and then we go to Conakry to the studio and record with full band." After some more talking and jamming, Van Damme packed his things and left back to his village, while me and my partner decided to pay a visit to the hotel nightclub for the first time. It was Friday, after all. "Wait till you see the girls there," my partner enthused as he stood in front of the living room mirror, ruffling his feathers, so to speak. "Now you see Kindia nightlife." But to our surprise, the courtyard of the nightclub was crowded with only men as we walked over there. The guys were dressed eloquently indeed and were in a jolly mood as the loudspeakers boomed away with Afrobeats music through the semi-open doors. But there was not a single woman in sight. "What going on?" my partner grumbled with disappointment as we pushed our way through the crowded vestibule into the interior of the nightclub, which was decorated with almost nothing but long coils of Christmas lights, red, blue, and green, that were flickering all over the ceiling and the walls. There was a huge mirror on one of the walls facing the dance floor, which was practically unlit except for these tacky decoration lights. "Where are all the girls that you talked about?" I shouted in his ear as we watched how some 60 big burly guys were grinding away on the dimly lit dance floor, with maybe only 3 or 4 women scuttling among them. These few specimens were encircled by groups of huge black bodies pounding away with abandon, and the air was thick with cheap cologne and testosterone. "I don't know," Mohammed said. "Maybe this is some private party. Let's go sit anyway." We sat at the bar counter and ordered some lukewarm drinks. Coke for him and a local beer called 33 for me. I turned to look at the bartender, and who would it be if not Mohammed number 2, our tour guide friend? "You work here as well?" I asked him after greeting him warmly. "Yes," he said with his usual pleasant smile. "Sometimes you need a little extra when there aren't enough tourists to go around." "What kind of party is this?" I asked. "It is a private party after a wedding in the city. But don't worry, you are guests at the hotel, so of course you're welcome here." "Thank you. But where are all the women?" "I don't know," he said and smiled. "Maybe they went hunting somewhere else." I couldn't help but burst out laughing when I saw these perspiring masculine figures dance. Since there were practically no women, some of the guys took to twerking their asses high in the air, with their feet close to the floor, as is the local choreography. These shading buttocks were then grabbed and pushed against by grinding pelvises of other guys in a not too implicit simulation of coitus. It was like being at a gay club in Helsinki. I almost fell off my chair at the sight of this Spartan orgy, and Mohammed warned me to keep my cool unless we wanted to get into trouble with the patrons. But those guys sure liked dancing, and looked really good doing it, knowing what they did. It wasn't exactly the acrobatic gymnastics of the Senegalese mbalakh dancers who would perform somersaults in their spiritual ecstasy, but it was still smoothly rhythmical and beautiful to look at, every step and fluctuation of muscle perfectly timed and effortless. And most importantly, everyone was smiling and exchanging greetings, even with us two, and no one was getting too drunk or obnoxious, which was always the case in any bar back in Finland. The music itself coming from the speakers was modern Afrobeats mixed with traditional instruments like the harp-like kora and the electric guitar. Yes, always the electric guitar. No matter what kind of rap or auto-tuned singing was flowing through the crackling speakers with the bass drops and drum machines, you could always make out the sublimely liquid phrasings of a lead guitar answering and giving calls, mixed just slightly underneath the main vocals. It seemed that the electric guitar was the most prevalent musical foundation, having survived cultural transitions from traditional sabar to the modern Afrobeats, ever since the instrument had been introduced to West Africa. We had a couple of drinks and enjoyed the music until closing time. With a slight ringing in my ears, I finally fell to bed and thought about what hard work being a musician in Guinea was. Van Damme himself played around 4 or 5 shows a week at weddings and other occasions, and his gigs were not like European 45 minutes plus encore. Far from it. It was 4 or 5 hours straight playing. And the pay wasn't handsome, unless some rich individual happened to come by and pull out a wad of bills that they would throw one at a time at the player's feet. Has anyone ever seen such a modern Messinas in Europe? Hell, over there you could consider yourself lucky if somebody offered you a cigarette after a show. You will get good public exposure, they always said back in Finland, instead of offering to pay you. Fuck you, I say. I'll expose myself for you right here if you want. But once again, I could only thank God that I would be away from home for 4 more weeks, drinking from the very fountain of life that was the Republic of Guinea, West Africa. I had fallen in love with the place, just like all the Africans I'd met in Finland had told me before I left. Once you step your foot on that continent, your heart will stay there, they said. And they were right.